There seems to be an unwritten rule in nature. Life in the oceans is always far more terrifying than life on land. This pattern holds true even today and echoes through history. During the age of the dinosaurs, the seas harbored creatures that would send shivers down your spine. Monsters that could make the fearsome T-Rex seem almost tame in comparison. In fact, throughout Earth's history, it's rare to find a time when the oceans were the safer choice. But there was one fleeting moment, long before the dinosaurs roamed, when survival was actually more likely beneath the waves. On land, almost everything, including Mother Nature herself, seemed engineered for maximum lethality. Welcome to the Lopingian, an era of extremes. The Earth's climate was changing rapidly, with intense volcanic activity and fluctuating sea levels transforming the environment. Vast deserts spread across the land, while life fought tooth and claw for survival. This was the Late Permian, a time when only the strongest would thrive and the deadliest predators ruled the food chain. In this hostile world, one carnivore came close to claiming the title of the largest land predator, a beast whose strength and size were matched only by its hunger. This is the runner-up for the largest land carnivore of the Lopingian, a titan of its time, but not without rivals. Will it be the one that reigns supreme, or is there something bigger lurking just ahead? The answer awaits, but not before we uncover the deadly world it shared. You won't want to miss the giants we meet next. And when we reach the Lopingians' final giants, we'll meet a creature so deadly it nearly claimed the title of the largest predator on land. But even then, it wasn't the only one fighting for dominance. Who will survive, and who will perish? But first, let's take a look beneath the waves, and what do you see? Life. Everywhere you look, life is thriving. But this wasn't just a few fish swimming around. During this period, the oceans were like a massive, thriving metropolis. Creatures of all shapes and sizes, from tiny plankton to massive marine reptiles, called these waters home. There was a kind of peace down here, where every creature had its place. Even the largest of predators moved with a grace you wouldn't expect from something so terrifying. Down here, life was balanced, harmonious. So what kind of life could thrive in these oceans? From the smallest, most fragile creatures to the mighty giants, the seas were full of surprises. It's funny, today we dive into the ocean to get a glimpse of this beauty, and sometimes we forget. This place has always been full of life. Lucky for us, the giant sea reptiles aren't swimming around anymore. In the prehistoric seas, the rules were different. Some of the largest animals in the world lived here. Massive reptiles like the ichthyosaurs patrolled the deep, while creatures like the ammonites were the tiny armored tankers of the ocean. The waters might have been safe from the chaos of land, but don't be fooled. There was danger lurking beneath the surface too. For every peaceful moment in the ocean, there was something watching, waiting, just below the surface. Next, we'll explore why, despite all the tranquility, there were still dangers in these waters, but nowhere near the horrors of the land. Imagine floating in these waters millions of years ago. You'd feel a sense of peace, a sanctuary compared to the chaos above. But what made these waters so unthreatening? Land was a nightmare. Everything was either hunting or being hunted. But down here, the ocean was a different world altogether. So, what was the secret? Why was life in the water, well, safer? Let's break it down. For starters, the ocean provided consistency. The water temperatures didn't fluctuate as drastically as land climates. It acted as a buffer, a stabilizer, where sudden violent changes were far less common. And then there were the currents, nature's highways, distributing nutrients and keeping ecosystems balanced. It was like a life support system, perfectly tuned for survival. In fact, some scientists believe that these stable conditions were crucial for life to evolve in the first place. While land life struggled with constant environmental disasters, ocean life had a chance to grow and diversify. Imagine a world where the biggest threats are outside your bubble, where the storms rage above, but you float in tranquility below. Honestly, if you had a choice between staying underwater or braving the surface, I think we all know which we'd pick. We humans like to complain about a bad day. But trust me, the land dwellers back then had it much worse. But don't be fooled. While the ocean was safer, it wasn't paradise. Predators lurked beneath the surface too, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Which leads us to the land, where the true horrors awaited. The opposite story on land and Earth's old rulers. Now let's step onto solid ground. But be warned, this isn't the lush paradise you might be imagining. This is where the story takes a dark turn. Life on land was a battlefield. Here's the truth. Life on land was a constant struggle. The Earth's old rulers, ferocious predators and massive herbivores, were in a never-ending competition for survival. Every day was a battle just to exist. You think today's apex predators are terrifying? Back then, Earth's rulers made even the fiercest lions and bears look like teddy bears. These creatures were designed for one thing: domination. Now, imagine being a smaller creature, vulnerable, always on the lookout, never able to rest. For these land dwellers, fear wasn't an emotion, it was a way of life. If you've ever had one of those days where everything feels like it's out to get you, well, welcome to the daily life of Earth's ancient land creatures. Take a look at Earth's original sabertooths. These massive predators were like the stuff of nightmares. Their jaws alone were enough to send even the toughest creatures running. We see a giant predator stalking its prey, moving with deadly precision across the cracked landscape. And the worst part? It wasn't just the sabertooths. Land was crawling with predators, all competing for dominance. It was a time when being at the top of the food chain didn't make you safe. It just made you a bigger target. But while sabertooths ruled parts of the land, even they weren't the most dangerous. Somewhere in the shadows, even larger, deadlier predators were waiting to make their move. Next, we'll uncover Earth's true apex predator. Before lions roared and tigers stalked the forests, Earth was home to an entirely different kind of predator, one that relied not just on speed or strength, but on a weapon that would become infamous: the saber. These were Earth's original sabertooths, fierce, terrifying, and masters of ambush. With jaws built for crushing and teeth longer than your forearm, they were built for one purpose: to kill. We see a sabertooth stalking through tall grass, unseen by a group of herbivores. The tension builds as the camera zooms in on the predator's muscles tightening, preparing for the strike. The predator charges forward in a burst of speed, fangs bared, sinking its teeth into its prey. Dust flies into the air as the scene slows to highlight the intensity. The original sabertooths weren't just fighters, they were silent assassins. With precision and lethal force, they struck fast and hard, and once they got their jaws around you, it was over. It wasn't just about brute strength. These creatures used tactics, ambushes, stealth, timing. They were the ultimate hunters of their day, with jaws that could pierce the thickest hides and bring down the largest prey. Sure, today's big cats have some impressive moves, but they've got nothing on the original sabertooth. Imagine seeing that fearsome grin coming at you. Makes you appreciate the slightly more manageable house cats we have today, right? We see a modern house cat swatting at a toy, playfully oblivious to its terrifying ancestors. What made these predators so effective wasn't just their size or strength, it was their anatomy. These saber teeth weren't like anything seen before. They were weapons, designed to deliver a fatal bite. Scientists still debate just how strong those jaws were, but one thing is certain: they got the job done. These creatures ruled the land with their lethal jaws, but they weren't alone. Because while the saber-tooths lurked in the shadows, something far larger and more terrifying was waiting. The largest predator Earth had ever seen. In every era, there's one creature that rules them all: towering over everything else. And in this ancient time, one beast stood above all others, the largest predator Earth had ever seen. This wasn't just any predator. This was the apex of apex predators. Bigger, stronger, and deadlier than anything that walked before it or after it. It was over 10 feet long, and its bite was among the most powerful of any land animal at the time. Its very presence sent tremors across the land, a reminder that nothing was safe from its jaws. We see a smaller creature dart through the grass, trying to escape, but it's no use. The Gorgonopsid strikes with terrifying speed, its powerful jaws clamping down on its prey. In a time where everything was dangerous, this predator was the danger. And when it moved, the earth shook. Imagine the biggest land predator alive today, whether it's a grizzly bear or a crocodile. Now, double that in size, give it teeth built for tearing through bone, and make it faster than you'd ever expect. That was the Gorgonopsid. For the smaller creatures, every day was a gamble. The landscape offered no cover, no refuge. This predator wasn't just large, it was relentless. And when it had you in its sights, there was nowhere to hide. Look, we're lucky the largest predators today are a bit more relaxed. Sure, we have some scary creatures, but at least elephants are herbivores, right? Imagine if this Gorgonopsid decided to stick around. But even this beast wasn't invincible. As the environment changed, new predators rose to challenge it. And next, we'll meet the rival that threatened even the largest predator's reign, one that would prove just as deadly. Let's take a trip to ancient Russia, Permian Russia to be exact. But before you get too excited, here's your warning. It was a problem. We see violent volcanic eruptions, blackened skies, and massive tectonic shifts as the land looks like it's tearing itself apart. Imagine waking up to this. A world where the very ground you walked on seemed to hate you. Volcanic activity wasn't just constant. It was everywhere. And while today's Russia might be known for its cold winters, back then, it was something much, much worse. Permian Russia sat on one of the most unstable regions of Earth during this time. Tectonic plates were shifting, volcanoes were erupting, and the land was caught in an endless cycle of destruction and regeneration. If you think climate change is bad today, imagine a world where the air itself was toxic. Even stepping outside was a gamble. The environment was actively trying to kill everything in its path. Life in Permian Russia was a daily fight for survival. For the creatures that called this hellish place home, every day felt like the end of the world. And in some ways, it was. We zoom in on one of these struggling creatures, its small, fragile body overwhelmed by the harsh environment. The camera lingers on the creature's desperate attempts to find safety. You can almost feel the exhaustion, the desperation. Every step forward was met with new challenges, a volcano erupting, a river of lava blocking the way, toxic gases suffocating the air. It's hard not to imagine how terrifying life must have been. Today, we think of extreme sports as a thrill, something to do on the weekends. But in Permian Russia, every day was an extreme sport. And trust me, no amount of training could prepare you for this kind of environment. But as dangerous as the environment was, it wasn't the only threat. In the shadows of Permian Russia, even more fearsome creatures were evolving, ready to claim their place as apex predators. Next, we'll meet the giants that ruled this unforgiving land, the Gorgonopsids. The giant Gorgonopsids that ruled Africa. While Permian Russia was a literal nightmare, Africa had its own rulers, giants that roamed the land like kings. These weren't your average predators. These were the Gorgonopsids. At over 10 feet long, with jaws that could crush bone, these giants ruled the African continent. They weren't just hunters, they were the top of the food chain. Imagine being one of the smaller creatures, just trying to survive another day. You see the shadow first, a giant figure moving silently through the tall grass. Then you hear it, the low growl that sends a chill down your spine. And before you can react, it's over. We see the Gorgonopsid leap into action, closing the gap between it and its prey with terrifying speed. But what made the Gorgonopsids so unstoppable? Their bite was among the strongest of any predator during this era. But it wasn't just about strength, it was about precision. Scientists believe their bite was engineered for maximum damage. One strike, and it was game over for anything unfortunate enough to cross their path. Now imagine living in constant fear of this giant. Every rustle in the grass, every shadow on the horizon. Was it your last moment? For the smaller creatures of Africa, life was a ticking clock, with the Gorgonopsid always in the background, ready to reset it. You think your boss is scary? Try living with a Gorgonopsid around the corner. There's no escaping this kind of pressure. In a world where survival of the fittest wasn't just a theory, it was life. These predators didn't just survive, they thrived. The Gorgonopsids ruled Africa with an iron jaw. They were the kings of their domain, shaping the landscape with their very presence. But even these giants had their enemies. Next, we'll meet their arch-nemesis, a rival just as deadly, just as cunning, and just as determined to rule the land. Enter the Therocephalians. They say that even the fiercest predators have enemies. And for the Gorgonopsids, their greatest rival came not from the shadows, but from a predator that was equally cunning, equally fierce, the Therocephalians. These creatures were small compared to the Gorgonopsids, but size wasn't their game. With intelligence and speed, they became the arch-nemesis of Africa's biggest predators. And trust me, when these two met, it was nothing short of a showdown. Imagine the scene. A towering Gorgonopsid, jaws wide open, ready to crush its next meal. And across from it, a Therocephalian, calculating every move, knowing one mistake could be its last. What they lacked in size, they made up for in sheer survival instinct. Therocephalians were the early masters of strategy, similar to how modern predators like wolves and hyenas operate today. They knew when to strike and, more importantly, when to run. This wasn't about strength. It was about playing the long game. While Gorgonopsids had power, the Therocephalians had adaptability. Their size allowed them to exploit smaller prey, their cunning helped them avoid direct conflict, and their sheer determination made them formidable in a world dominated by giants. Think of it like a cat-and-mouse game, only this time the mouse was just as dangerous as the cat. If Gorgonopsids were the bullies of the Permian playground, the Therocephalians were the scrappy kids who always seemed to know how to fight back. Alone, they were dangerous, but together, they were unstoppable. And as the land became harsher and more unpredictable, another deadly feature would emerge in the animal kingdom, one that would forever change the balance of power. Next, we'll discover the first animals to evolve venom. First animals to evolve. Venom. Predators had fangs, claws, and muscle. But in the Permian period, a new kind of power was beginning to take shape. Venom. This wasn't about brute strength. It wasn't about size or speed. This was something far deadlier, silent, invisible, and lethal. These creatures were the first to evolve venom, and it changed everything. Venom is nature's biochemical weapon. It paralyzes, weakens, and eventually kills prey, allowing even the smallest predator to take down creatures much larger than themselves. And once venom became part of the evolutionary arms race, survival in the Permian became a whole new game. Imagine that moment, the venom coursing through its prey's body, shutting down muscles, overwhelming the nervous system. It was quick, it was quiet, and it was deadly. And today, well, let's just say some of us are still not fans of venomous creatures. Whether it's spiders under the bed or snakes in the grass, this ancient fear runs deep. But you have to give these animals credit. Venom was a game changer, and it stuck around for a reason. Venom isn't just about killing, it's about survival. It leveled the playing field, allowing smaller, weaker creatures to compete in a world dominated by giants. And this new power changed the balance of ecosystems forever. But while venom helped the underdogs, there was still room for giants. And in the next chapter, we'll meet a predator so large, so fearsome, it could bring down animals the size of modern-day lions without any venom at all. Enter the jaguar-sized predator with a lion-sized head. Jaguar-sized predator with a lion-sized head. Now, imagine a predator the size of a jaguar, but with the head of a lion. In the Permian period, such a creature existed, and it was every bit as terrifying as it sounds. This wasn't just another carnivore. This was a creature built for one thing: domination. With a head so large it could crush bone and muscles built for speed, this predator was the ultimate combination of power and agility. Jaguars are among the most fearsome predators alive today. But now, imagine a jaguar with a head built like a lion's, larger, more muscular, and more terrifying. In the Permian period, this predator was the top contender for taking down anything that crossed its path. We see the ancient predator leap onto its prey, using its massive head and powerful jaws to bring the animal to the ground. Imagine trying to escape something that has both the speed of a jaguar and the strength of a lion. Yeah, good luck with that. In the Permian world, this was the stuff of nightmares. You can almost feel the weight of this predator, its sheer dominance over the landscape. For any creature that found itself in its path, there was no escaping. And in a world where survival meant everything, this predator was at the top of the food chain. But as powerful as this predator was, it wasn't alone. In the next chapter, we'll meet its rival, another giant of the Permian, vying for the title of the ultimate land carnivore. Even in the world of giants, there can only be one true king. But close behind was another contender, an animal so large it could easily be mistaken for the ultimate predator of its time. This creature was the runner-up for the largest land carnivore in the Permian period, and it was just as deadly. Imagine something larger than a tiger, more powerful than a lion, and faster than you'd ever expect. This runner-up may not have claimed the title of the largest, but it had everything it needed to dominate the land. Its sheer size and speed allowed it to prey on almost anything that crossed its path. It's like coming in second place at a race, but the first place winner is a T-Rex. Not a bad spot to be in when you're still bigger than everything else on the field. Picture yourself facing a predator that towers over you, its claws digging into the earth with every step, its breath hot and heavy. One wrong move, and you're done. In the Permian period, this was reality. A game of survival, where the price of losing was your life. But even this monstrous predator wasn't alone. There were others lurking in the shadows, other carnivores, each with their own deadly set of skills. Next, we'll dive into the darker side of the Permian period as we explore the other late Permian carnivores that haunted this prehistoric world. Other late Permian carnivores. The Permian world wasn't just a stage for one or two predators. It was teeming with deadly carnivores, each vying for dominance in a landscape where the stakes were life and death. Some were small and swift, others large and powerful, and together they created a deadly dance of survival. There were predators built for speed like the sphenocodonts, and others that relied on sheer size and strength. And while some hunted alone, others may have operated in groups, ambushing their prey with coordinated attacks. It was a predator's paradise, or, depending on your point of view, a living nightmare. From ambush hunters to relentless chasers, the late Permian had it all. Imagine your cat playing with a toy mouse, but the mouse is actually a giant herbivore, and your cat is 10 feet long with saber-like teeth. Not exactly the kind of pet you'd want on your couch. These predators weren't just opportunists. They were masters of strategy. Whether hunting in packs or going it alone, they knew how to take down prey much larger than themselves. And in a world of constant competition, every hunt could mean the difference between life and extinction. But even in a world ruled by carnivores, there were still giants that dwarfed even the fiercest predators. Next, we turn our gaze to the giants of the Permian period, the massive herbivores that ruled the land and the water, and the colossal battle for survival they faced every day. Amphibians, kind of like the multitaskers of the prehistoric world. They didn't exactly pick sides between land and water. Instead, they took the middle ground, surviving in both. Imagine having a foot in two worlds, one full of danger and the other a bit less risky, but still no walk in the park. In a way, it's a little like juggling two jobs today. These amphibians had to master life in water while constantly testing the boundaries of land. It's that balance that gave them an edge. They weren't stuck relying on one environment. If things got tough on land, they could slip back into the water and vice versa. While life on land was filled with unknown threats, the water offered a refuge. Amphibians weren't the biggest or the fiercest, but their ability to adapt kept them alive while others fell by the wayside. Think of it this way. Today's amphibians, like frogs and salamanders, have that same survivor mentality. They're the unsung heroes of evolution, surviving while bigger and scarier creatures eventually went extinct. And in prehistoric times, they were like nature's first part-time commuters between the chaotic land and the slightly more stable waters. And maybe that's why we can all relate to amphibians. They didn't dominate the world, but they found a way to survive by keeping their options open, just like we do when we face uncertain times. Herbivores and the largest animal on Earth. Now, let's talk about some real heavyweights, the herbivores. These gentle giants were the largest animals to walk the Earth, and their size alone gave them a level of protection. Imagine an animal so massive that even the most fearsome predators would think twice before attacking. It's like elephants and rhinos today. No one's messing with them, right? Except back then, these giants were even bigger, like skyscrapers roaming the Earth. They didn't need claws or sharp teeth to stay safe. Their size was their greatest defense. There's something almost peaceful about these creatures, isn't there? Sure, they were massive, but they lived a slow, steady existence, grazing in the wide-open plains. It's a scene that feels oddly serene, until you remember that danger was never far away. For predators, the challenge was real. Attacking one of these colossal creatures was a gamble, but these herbivores had their own struggles too. They had to keep moving, constantly searching for enough food to fuel their massive bodies. Life for them was a constant balancing act, avoiding predators while finding enough sustenance to keep going. So, while they may have seemed untouchable, these herbivores weren't invincible. Their size kept most predators at bay, but nature had its way of leveling the playing field. Disease, environmental shifts, and food shortages would challenge their survival, pushing even the largest creatures to their limits. Prehistoric skies. Danger from above. Just when you thought land was dangerous enough, there was another frontier, the sky. Imagine looking up and seeing not birds, but massive flying reptiles like pterosaurs. These guys owned the skies, and if you were unlucky enough to be on their radar, there wasn't much you could do. Imagine living in constant fear, not just from what lurks on the ground, but from what might swoop down from the sky at any moment. There was no escape. No matter where you looked, something was always coming for you. It wasn't just the predators on land that you had to watch out for. Those who dominated the skies were just as deadly, if not more so. With speed, stealth, and an aerial advantage, they were the masters of a new domain. Prehistoric skies were just as treacherous as the ground below, and if you were small or vulnerable, there was no safe place. The skies, once a symbol of freedom, had become yet another realm of danger. Mother Nature wants to kill you too, the great dying. And just when you thought things couldn't get worse, Mother Nature stepped in. Around 252 million years ago, Earth experienced the most destructive mass extinction in its history, the Permian-Triassic extinction event, also known as the Great Dying. The very planet that had nurtured life now turned on its inhabitants in the most catastrophic way possible. It wasn't just the land or the sea that became uninhabitable. Both environments were ravaged. The oceans, once a safe haven, turned deadly, and the land, scorched and poisoned by volcanic activity, offered no refuge. In a matter of thousands of years, mere blinks in geological time, life on Earth was decimated. Over 90% of species were wiped out. Amphibians, giant herbivores, even the mighty pterosaurs, all faced the same grim fate. There was no escape. This was nature's way of resetting the clock, of wiping the slate clean. And in the aftermath, only a fraction of life remained. This was the darkest chapter in Earth's history, one that changed the course of evolution forever, setting the stage for the age of dinosaurs that was to follow. The Great Dying reminds us of one inescapable truth. The world can change in an instant. The land and sea, once full of life, became uninhabitable. But in that devastation, there was also a chance for new beginnings. Those that survived would go on to shape the future in ways we can barely imagine today. Today, we live in a world where land and sea coexist in a delicate balance. But history tells us that this wasn't always the case. In the past, water was safer than land, a sanctuary from the chaos above. And as we look to the future, it's worth remembering how fragile that balance really is. Earth has always been in motion, and who knows when it might shift again. Hit that subscribe button now